Good morning and good afternoon, good evening, good wherever you are. I'm your host, That Little Astro Chick, the channel where we discuss the astrology of writers, artists, and anything else that I find interesting. So today's topic is going to discuss one of the more difficult aspects of astrology. And the reason for that is because I saw that my last video got a couple more views than what I normally get. Normally, I'm lucky if I get perhaps 5 views, but this time I actually got 70 whole views and some subscribers. So welcome. I'm glad that you're here. I will be adding more content throughout my time on this channel. So for today's video, I wanted to discuss another difficult astrological perspective, mainly because since that one got more views, maybe this one will get more views as well. And that is going to be Moon square Neptune. So first, I'm going to discuss what those aspects are in and of themselves, the natal elements, as well as what the transit elements are. So the moon in astrology, it covers all elements that deal with the 4th house. That's going to be the house that deals with your past, your family lineage, your public life over time, as well as your beginning and your end of life conditions. This is going to be an aspect that deals with how you process emotions. I typically speaking to think about the moon as in, this is what's going to come out in you when you are feeling very stressed about something. This is going to deal with how you navigate and how you manage your emotions. It's also the astrological element that deals with women. So the moon in someone's chart can also dictate who their mother was or how they saw their mother when they were growing up, as well as how they will deal with women and their feelings for women throughout the rest of their lives. And the planet Neptune, which represents all 12th house matters in astrology, it deals with your Achilles heel when it comes to things that you might feel insecure about, your dreams, your aspirations, your creativity. What do you fantasize about? What is it that is really important from you that you might be hiding from yourself or that you might be hiding from the world? And when it comes to the harsher aspects in astrology, squares are typically speaking elements that we have to work through. They tend to be more of an internal process as opposed to oppositions, which are more like events that can occur. So when Moon squares Neptune in a natal aspect, this is going to deal with a person, or an element I should say, where they have a very difficult time processing their emotions, specifically around women, their public image. It tends to make people incredibly private, sometimes to their detriment. It can also attract a lot of fights, especially when it comes to women, and these elements might be very confusing for the other person. So if you have Moon square Neptune in your natal chart, here are some examples of how it could manifest. You might have a very difficult relationship with your mother, and perhaps you don't fully understand why. Your mother could have been someone who could have played the victim in your family life, especially when it comes to a lot of confusion and deception over the way that things feel. It might be very hard for you to get down to the bottom of things. This can also be an aspect that deals with an early life condition where you could have moved around a lot. Sometimes when people have Moon square Neptune in their natal charts, these could be people that come from a background of immigrants or where their family has relocated. That is not true for me because I have Moon square Neptune. But one way that it manifested was that the first 5 years of my life, my family moved around a lot of different places. So home was never considered to be stable for me. And even though, for example, my mother and I were born in the same city, she was raised in a different city than where I was raised. So that's one element of Moon square Neptune. These could be people who could be very messy and might have a hard time with managing routines or establishing routines in their life. These also could be people to where showering might be difficult, keeping a clean house might become difficult. This is also a really strong aspect when it comes to addiction because it's going to deal with more of an internal process. Typically speaking, if somebody does have Moon square Neptune, I would highly recommend that they stay away from drugs and alcohol if possible. Some of the more positive aspects, I would say, of this square is that through the maturation process and the older that you get, you might be very good with navigating other cultures, possibly because you've moved around so much. It can also make somebody extremely sensitive, being really good at picking up on psychic energies. A downside is that it can also make you very prone to psychic attacks, as well as picking up on the negative energy of other people. It can also make one's suffering become heightened or magnified, and feeling alone in that suffering. It can also be really hard to accept feedback, especially when it comes to your emotions. The one area that I find that Moon Square Neptune affects me in my natal chart is that I can be very, very sensitive to people's sob stories. I can be incredibly gullible to manipulation, as well as triangulation. It can sometimes feel very confusing for me to deal with other people and their emotions. And usually the way that I will deal with this is by disengaging from them. Having Moon Square Neptune in a natal chart can also make somebody very sensitive when it comes to photography or public image or cameras. I am not somebody who likes to have their picture taken at all. I'm someone who tends to run from them. I haven't updated some of my social media profiles in over a decade because I just don't like sharing pictures with people. So those are some ways that it can manifest in terms of a natal chart. In terms of a transit, this can deal with a lot of confusion, a lot of emotional insecurity when it comes to the person. Their perceptions on things may actually be quite off during this time. It can also be very easy to misread others, especially when it comes to a first impression when you're meeting them, especially I would say when it comes to dealing with women. This might be a time in where you might be interested in trying some type of drug or alcohol, and then it could probably induce some type of tragedy in your life, because Neptune also deals with things that are tragic. The reason why is because it deals with the 12th house, and those things that are related to tragedy usually deals with things that we cannot see. And then when we start to see them, it unfortunately becomes way too late. This could also be a time in which people could be very deceptive, or deceptive people could come into your life. It also is a time to where your dreams or your superstitions could become really, really heightened. As I said before, as someone who has Moon Square Neptune in her natal chart, I'm someone who tends to have a lot of really erratic dreams. It's very easy to remember a lot of my dreams. And this also could be a time to where you might feel more tempted to get more into spirituality, like the darker side of spirituality, but you may want to be more aware of your physical surroundings. So basically, don't be sneaky. It can have an energy of being very sneaky. Your emotions, they could possibly hide from you. And then when they show up, it can almost feel like it's a too late moment. So I don't want this video to be too long, so I want to give some tips for how to deal with this. As I had said before, because the moon deals with your beginning and your end of life conditions, this could be a square for an internal process where it gets easier to manage when you're doing this over time. I know that like the early life conditions can be especially hectic and chaotic and can have a feeling of always shifting and moving around. When it comes to how to deal with this, especially for a natal aspect, I would say to be more open with processing your feelings and sharing those with other people. So the perception might be off, but you'll get somewhere a lot more quickly, I would say, and peacefully, if you can share what's going on with you as opposed to going straight into what an emotional reaction could possibly be. And not everybody is really going to understand what you're saying, but I would say that you will at least have some opportunity to come into having more community around the occasion of what your suffering might be. Don't just take it on with you completely by yourself. Another aspect that I like about this square, and I've noticed this with individuals who do have it, an example I could just think of off the top of my head would be the rapper Nicki Minaj, is that it's a really good square to have, I would say, when it comes to expressing yourself recreationally. And that's because the Moon Square Neptune aspect can deal with people who may have more interesting personalities when they're doing something that is in a recreational setting. I know that that is definitely true for me. So thankfully my Neptune, it trines with my sun, but I would probably say on average I'm probably not that interesting of a person, but I am really interesting when I dance. I'm really interesting when I write. I'm really interesting when it comes to social settings where I can feel very comfortable. And I think that that could be one of the more positive aspects of this. So I would say, especially for a transit, this might be a time to do something recreationally. And then I think that you'll see a different side of your creativity come out. And that can be extremely fulfilling to have in your life. Another part that I would say, especially for when it comes to transits and the natal elements, is to really be mindful of when you meet people and they're trying to play on your pity. Because, unfortunately, I've been called kind of heartless for this. But when it comes to people who have sob stories, typically speaking, sob stories are the opening stage of a manipulation. And you want to be mindful of people manipulating you because it is extremely easy to be manipulated during having this as a natal element, as well as having this as a transit element. And lastly, I would say, and I think I talked about this before, try to tap into your creativity for something that goes outside of yourself. So if there's something maybe that you could access that's from like another culture, another society, another nationality, or I should say nation, this might be a time to really discover that and delve into it, because who knows, you may actually be really good at it. One of the things that I really do appreciate about this square is that it gives you a really high level of sensitivity and sympathy and empathy towards others. But also I would say you want to be mindful and be realistic about who other people are, about who you are. And when it comes to processing your feelings, you're allowed to process those any way that you want as a way to alleviate the suffering that you might feel. So I think that's all that I really have to say for that one. This now concludes my video on how to deal with Moon square Neptune, natal, and transit. Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.